Okay, so we are here to talk about how to customize the CEU presentations through the MIA+BSI. And I first want to start by just explaining, or actually reviewing, the intent of a CEU program so that you can understand the reasoning behind some of the rules for customizing presentations. The intent of a program is to provide education first and foremost. And in order to be approved through the different organizations such as AIA, NKBA, IDCC, etc., we cannot focus the presentations on a specific brand or proprietary product. And that's something that people new to these programs don't always know. They're not always aware of that. We can't develop an entire CEU about your specific stone that you quarry. We can develop a CEU about limestone in general, but we can't develop a CEU about only Texas cream limestone. Okay? And any brand names, logos, anything like that is not allowed in the interior structure of the presentation. You certainly can talk about those things before and after your CEU, and you can include those logos on the first and last slides, but in the middle, the educational portion must remain broad. Another intention of the CEU program is to position yourself as the expert. So by getting in front of your audience and teaching them about limestone, you become that go-to person. So then when that architect or designer has an upcoming project about limestone, they're going to contact you for more information. So even though you're not going in there talking only about your limestone and how it's better than everybody else's, you still become that go-to person for limestone. So essentially, in the end, you will sell more of your product or service, which is everybody's main goal in the business world. Now, the intent of the MIA+BSI CEU program is a little more specific. Our programs must focus on natural stone, and the definition of a natural stone is stones which have been harvested from their in situ position in the earth and then cut and machined into final products without alteration to the natural fabric of the material. So quartz-based products are not considered a natural stone because they are basically crushed natural stone, and then it's machined and cemented together with a resin product, which alters the natural fabric of the material. So I just want to make that clear from the beginning here. If you want a program approved through our program, it must focus on natural stone. And I'm not saying that you can't talk about other products, because you certainly can, but the primary focus must be on natural stone. So in developing a presentation that is unique to your company, that's customized just for you, you can either use one of our turnkey courses as is, and since you have gone through the regular orientation for the CEU program, you've heard the explanations of all of the 13 courses that we currently have available. The second option is to customize those turnkey courses to be more relevant for your products and services. And we're going to talk in more detail about each of these options in this presentation today. The next option is to develop a presentation unique to your company and get it approved through the MIA+BSI provider network. So if it's about natural stone, but it's not the same as one of the other presentations that we have, we can help you through that process and get it approved through our provider network, administer it for you if there's something that you want to develop an entire CEU for. And then the final choice is to become a provider on your own. So if you have a CEU presentation that is not about natural stone, but you're looking for resources to turn that presentation into a CEU course, then you can use this presentation today to help you get started with that process. There are a number of different organizations that handle the transcripts for CEU credits. And those are listed here on your screen, and you should be familiar with these by now, but I just want to review them quickly. The AIA, the IDCEC, is an umbrella organization for interior design associations, including ASID. LACIS is another umbrella organization, this one for landscape architect associations, including ASLA, GBCI for the lead professionals, and NKBA for the kitchen and bath professionals. Each organization has their own requirements for how many credits their members need to obtain each year or every 2 years, and we have some examples of those requirements up on the screen. The AIA requires 18 credit hours, 12 of which must have the HSW designation, and we'll talk more about what that HSW designation means later on. We also have ASID as an example. For the ASID, they require 10 credit hours every 2 years. LACIS, this varies quite a bit by the state that they live in. They average a need of 12 credit hours per year. And actually, they track 1 credit hour as 50 minutes, so it's less than an actual hour. GBCI requires 15 hours over 2 years, and NKBA requires 2 CEUs over the course of 2 years, but 2 CEUs is actually 20 because it's 0.1 is 1 hour. Another thing to point out is the difference between distance learning and in-person learning. These different organizations generally separate those two. So if I wanted to present our Natural Stone 101 class through GoToMeeting, a software that we're using right now, you would need to have that submitted as a distance learning credit, because right now as it exists, it's an in-person credit. So if you plan to give these through a webinar, then you need to let me know that that is your intention, and then we will submit it properly as a distance learning instead of in-person credit. In-person ones cannot be given via webinar. The distance learning cannot be given in person. Next section here, we're just going to talk about the money. What are the potential costs that are involved? If you were going to become a provider on your own, which is not through the MIA+BSI provider network, this is solely on your own, these are the different costs that you can expect. And these prices listed are based on getting 1 course approved in 1 region for each year. If you were to become a provider for AIA, you can only do this within 1 region, and you cannot provide distance learning. That's $1,800. IDCEC is $630 plus an additional $250 for each course that you have in addition to the first one. LACIS is $295, unlimited courses as long as you keep up with that annual membership fee. The GBCI is $550 plus $250 if you are going to have more than 1 course. And then the NKBA is $368 based on your annual revenue. So that's highly variable depending on the revenue that your company sees each year. So those are just some examples of what it would cost to do this solely on your own. And I do have some other slides in here that give more examples of how much it costs to do it on your own. I'm not going to go into detail with these, but they are on the presentation. So if you wish to look at these a little closer, then you can download the slides from the presentation and look at them a little bit closer that way. Now, through our program, these are the prices that you will pay. A typical enrollment is $300 per year. So most of the companies are paying that $300 per year plus $50 for each speaker that you have, plus $50 for each class that you give. We also have a number of premier companies, and they pay $2,500 per year for unlimited use of the program, so they do not have the $50 speaker fee or the $50 class fee. Most of the time you can do the math and figure out which one makes sense for your company. Now, with those fees paid, you can use any of our 13 turnkey programs, and most of them are already approved for credit through the organizations listed, the AIA, IDCEC, LACIS, and NKBA. We also have a few classes that are approved for GBCI credit. This is new this year. You can now create a new unique course to your company for no extra charge through our program. And we're doing this how to customize presentations webinar to give you some guidance on how to do this. Previously, it was more of a one-on-one situation where we were helping you through each of the steps. But as you can imagine, administrative time costs money, and so it just wasn't feasible for us to offer those for no charge. But now we're trying to get a little more organized and provide you guys these resources so that you can do a lot of this work on your own, and in turn we are offering this service for no charge for you. So if you're going to develop your own presentation, you can get it approved through our program with AIA, LACIS, and NKBA credit for no charge. If you wish to obtain IDCEC or GBCI credit, there will be a small additional charge, and those are just pass-through costs. That's what we get charged, and that's what we will in turn charge you. Typical companies are limited to one class every 2-year period, and premier companies are listed to 2 new classes per year. Okay, so there's not an unlimited. You can't go and create 5 new classes in 1 year. You do have some limits to this, but I think that 1 for every 2-year period, speaking from experience in developing presentations, is quite enough because it's a lot of work. Now going to talk about customizing our turnkey presentations. And the first thing that you should do to start this process is to review the existing course offerings that we have available. And you can find those on our website by clicking Education and then Continuing Education, which brings you to the page that you see on the screen, and then you click on Classes Available. And that will give you all of the presentations that we currently have. It talks about the learning objectives, all of the credit information is there, so that you can decide, is this one that might work for my company with a few customizations. So once you decide on a presentation that's the closest to what your educational needs are, you can decide now what you are going to change within the presentation to customize it for your company, make it more relevant for your products and services, and or make it more relevant to the audience that you are going to be presenting to. And there's a few things that you can do to these existing presentations. You can add, remove, or swap out photos. You can rearrange content. You can add slides. And you can, most of the time, remove bullet points. So the next couple of slides that I have here, I took directly out of our Natural Stone 101 class, just to give you an example of some things that you can do to customize the presentations. And this is within, again, the Natural Stone 101 presentation, and it's in the section that we talk about each one of the different stone species. And we start with a slide about the science of the stone. It describes what it is, a little bit about how it's formed, and where you can get more information about that type of stone. We then show you a picture of a travertine quarry. And this is just one example of a travertine quarry, but if you quarry travertine, you can certainly take this photo out and put in a picture of your own quarry. We now talk a little bit more about the characteristics of that travertine. And then we show a couple of examples of installed projects. So maybe you're not a quarrier, but you're a distributor and you sell certain types of travertine that people use in their homes and on their buildings. You can take the photos that we have here out of the presentation and replace them with the ones that you have worked on as a company maybe ones that you've worked on personally, so that you can share some of the background stories. This is why we chose this particular material. This is where this is located. It might be a local project that your audience might be familiar with, just to make it more engaging for your audience and make it easier for you to present. And then we end the section with a larger photo, this one of Noche Travertine that's on the wall. It's also on the reception desks and on the flooring. So just another high impact image of a travertine installation, which you could potentially replace with an installation image of your own. So just reiterating the things that you can do: replace images with ones that your own company has worked on. You could rearrange. We have a section within the Natural Stone 101 presentation called Know Your Stone. Some people prefer to talk about that before you go through the different stone species instead of talking about it at the very end, and that's up to you. You can certainly rearrange those depending on your presentation style. Or let's say you sell a lot of basalt, but we don't have a section on basalt, although we actually do have a section on basalt. But if there was another stone type that you would want to add on to that, you certainly can do that. You just add similar slides, fill in the content on your own. And you could also remove bullet points as long as the learning objectives are still met. So if there's a certain slide, there's a bullet point in there that talks about some sort of testing standard, but you're not really familiar with that, you can take that bullet point out so that it doesn't spur more conversation about that topic, as long as taking that bullet point out still satisfies those learning objectives. A couple guidelines to keep in mind: logos are limited to the beginning and the end of the presentation. So you can put your logos on the first slide and the last slide, but you cannot put your logos within the interior of the presentation. So watch out for watermarked photos. A lot of times that's just by default what you have available to you, but make sure that those don't exist. No brand names or references to proprietary products, and 70% of the original presentation must remain exactly the same, and then the learning objectives, again, must still be met. So all those learning objectives for each presentation are listed at the beginning. You want to read through those, make sure that you understand them, and then as you're moving things around, adding your own stuff, taking bullet points away, just make sure that you are still satisfying those learning objectives. Anybody have any questions about customizing the presentations?
I don't have any.
Okay, we will keep on going. Developing a brand new presentation. So again, I'll refer you to the classes available page, and you can find that on our website. Click Education, Continuing Education, and then Classes Available. And at the bottom of that Classes Available page, there's a section that says Presentations Available through Select MIA+BSI companies. And there we have a list of presentations that have been customized solely for one of our members. So not everybody within the Speakers Bureau can give those presentations, only the companies that developed them. And that just serves to give you some examples of what other companies are doing. The first thing that you want to do is to determine your learning objectives. And a learning objective is a statement that clearly expresses what the student will be able to do after taking this course. And those learning objectives should be proportionate to the content of the presentation. So there's 4 learning objectives, so you're basically breaking down your presentation into 4 sections and then writing a statement about each section. If you are getting this presentation approved through the MIA+BSI provider network, we require that 2 out of your 4 learning objectives, or half of your presentation, must relate directly to the stone industry. So that doesn't mean that it has to relate directly to stone. It needs to relate directly to the stone industry. For example, we've had a question in the past about, can I develop a presentation about marketing within the stone industry? So if you were developing a presentation about how to market your company on social media, for example, then these learning objectives aren't going to be specifically about travertine or about silicious stones, but the learning objectives will be a little more broad in that they relate to the stone industry, but are not about stone specifically. For an HSW credit, is 3 out of your 4 learning objectives must pertain to health, safety, and welfare. So when we've heard in the past that an HSW credit is harder to obtain, the way that we can obtain those credits is by being cognizant of those health, safety, and welfare keywords when we're writing our learning objectives. So we need to make sure that 3 out of the 4 talk about something to do with health, something to do with safety, or something to do with welfare. Here are some examples of behavioral verbs that you can use in your learning objectives. So your learning objectives should start with one of these words or a similar type of behavioral verb. And again, this list is going to be available to you if you download the slides from this presentation, so you can refer back to this if you need to. The next step after you determine your learning objectives is to write an outline. And I highly encourage you to use a team approach just because it's a lot easier to round everything out when you have more than one viewpoint, more than one expert in that area to help you out. Make sure that when you're writing that outline that the content of your presentation is going to be proportionate to your learning objectives. So one of your learning objectives is about identifying the difference between a real stone and an artificial or manufactured stone. Then about 25% of your presentation should be about that learning objective. 1 bullet point for each slide, shoot for 60 slides. If you're going for an hour presentation, that's just a general rule. We do have some presenters who prefer to have a lot more slides because they flip through them quickly, and we have presenters that prefer to have much fewer slides because they want to spend more time on each slide, and that's up to you. 60 slides is just a good starting point for a 1-hour presentation. And once you are finished, you can use this outline that you're developing for your speakers to help them learn the presentation, or for a handout to your attendees to help them follow along with the presentation. So it might seem like you're being redundant with this outline. Why not just jump into the PowerPoint phase? But it is very helpful to keep you organized. It's helpful as a resource for your speakers later on and as a handout for your attendees later on. Now, the next thing after you write your outline, you'll want to gather photos and graphics. And you can use your company's library of photos. I would encourage you to use not only finished products, but products in different phases of the installation progress. Also, you can use sketches and screenshots of the MIA+BSI Dimension Stone Design Manual. It's a fantastic resource for technical information. We also allow you to use existing CEU presentations. So go through the different PowerPoints that we have. If there's photos in there that are relevant to your presentation, you can certainly use those. Just make sure if there's any photo credits that you carry those over as well. And also just make sure to watch out again for watermarked photos, because we can't have those within the interior of the presentation. No logos allowed. Now, once you've written your outline, you have gathered photos, you can now move into the phase where you're actually creating the PowerPoint presentation. You could also use Keynote, which is similar to PowerPoint only for a Mac. You could use Prezi. I haven't seen anybody use these yet, but I know that it's something that's becoming more popular in the education world, so you could definitely take a look at that. It's just a flashier, more modern way to do a presentation. And then you'll use the outline and the images that you already have organized to fill out that PowerPoint. Another thing that you'll want to do is to open up one of the existing MIA+BSI presentations to use that as a guide, especially the first 5-6 slides where you have the title, then you have the information about the speaker, we have information about speaker certification, the learning objectives, and the credit information. All of those things should be very similar to what we have already. And you can even copy and paste them into your PowerPoint presentation and then just replace the information in there. Again, for a 60-minute presentation, you're going to shoot for 60 to 80 slides. And make sure that your font size is at least 24 point. You can get down to 18 point, but keep in mind that you're going to be projecting this on a screen, and there might be some distance between the learner and the screen. So you want to keep the font size large enough that it can be readable from a bit of a distance. Now moving into the review process. So you've gone through all of the I'll call it the hard part on your guys' end, is all of the information gathering and development of that content. Now we move into the review process. Before you submit this to me, please double check for spelling and grammatical errors. If you don't, that's just going to increase the time that it takes for us to review that, because we're going to look at that stuff first and then send it back to you. So just do us all a favor, take care of those spelling and grammatical errors before you submit that to me. Another thing that we're going to look for in this first round of reviewing is that you have cited any sources that you reference. So if you have photos that are not your own, make sure that you cite those references. If you have information that you gathered from the Dimension Stone Design Manual or from another industry publication or somewhere on the internet, make sure that you're citing the sources. Also, make sure that everything is up to date and accurate. If you are pulling from a presentation or from information that your company's had on file for many years, make sure that it is still up to date. And another thing, just to reiterate, we do provide a technical review for your course. That's one of the services that you're getting through the MIA+BSI. However, it is ultimately the speaker who is responsible for the accuracy and the relevance of the information presented. So just because you're putting this information onto a PowerPoint and then getting it reviewed by our technical department, that does not make it accurate. That does not make it okay for you to present without knowing for sure that it is accurate. We prize ourselves on being highly educated and very experienced in the stone industry. However, there are some things that are going to slip through the cracks. So we will do everything we can to make sure that it's accurate, but ultimately it is the speaker's responsibility for that accuracy. So again, once you finish all of those basic review things and then you send it to me, I'm going to look for the spelling and grammar. I'm going to look for the citing of references. I'm also going to look for the required slides, so those ones at the beginning with the learning objectives, the ones at the end asking people to fill out evaluation forms. I'm going to double check that the learning objectives are concise and accurate, that logos are not present within the educational portion, they're only at the beginning and end. And this whole process can take about 2 weeks, and please expect to perform revisions after this step. It's very uncommon for someone to send me a presentation without me finding some things that I need to be changed. And it will be a little bit nitpicky at times, but it is required that these things are accurate and follow the guidelines. So once it passes my review, I will then pass it on to our technical department, and that takes up to 6 weeks. So this is where our technical experts, Chuck Muehlbauer, Mark Mario, Mike Laughlin, all staff of the MIA+BSI, will review the presentation for accuracy, and that will take some time, up to 6 weeks. And finally, once we get through the technical review, then we will submit it to the CEU reporting organizations. And you can let us know if you want IDCEC and GBCI approval. Those are an additional charge, but if you're going to present to those audiences, then of course you will want to get it approved through them. And that process can take up to 12 weeks. IDCEC is usually the one that lags. The other ones we usually see pretty quickly. But I would say typically if you were going to get all of these, you're going to see about 3 to 4 weeks. So if you add up all of these different review processes, my review of 2 weeks, the technical review of 6 weeks, the reporting to the CEU organizations, expect the entire process to take about 12 weeks. And that is after you have completed the development of your presentation. So once you have gotten it approved, then you can start scheduling events. And since we're doing this through our provider network, we are going to administer it the same as we do the turnkey presentations that we talked about in more detail during the original orientation class. So you would fill out the class notification form. If you're a typical provider, you're going to submit a payment for that $50 administration fee. All paperwork, the sign-in form, the evaluation form, the certificate of completion will be provided to you, and then we will list your class on that classes available page on our website. So again, reviewing, if you want to customize a presentation, what are your choices? You can use our turnkey courses as is with no changes. You can customize those existing presentations that we have to make them more relevant for your company. You can develop your very own presentation from scratch and get it approved through our provider network, and you will use this presentation today to help you through those steps. Or you can become a provider on your own, and again, at the beginning of this presentation, we do have some more resources for you on how much that might cost and where to start that process. Any questions that you have?
You said we can download this. Just is that from this presentation here or from the MIA website?
Well, those of you on the call today, I'll email you a link to this presentation so that you can have it. Those that might be listening through the Natural Stone University on demand, it'll be part of the resources in step 2 or 3, the step after this video, so that you can download that and have it for reference. Some other questions that I get frequently: can I create a class about quartz surface? You cannot develop a presentation about quartz through the MIA+BSI provider network because it is not a natural stone, and in order to be approved through our network, it needs to be about natural stone. But if you want to use this presentation to develop your own about quartz and then become a provider on your own, you're welcome to do that. Another question that I get often is, if I go to the work to create a class customized just for my company, can other MIA+BSI members use it? And the answer to that typically is no. We don't usually allow other members to utilize that presentation, but it's up to you. If you want to allow other people to use it, you certainly can. We have had people that go on to the classes available page. They're looking at those presentations that are available through specific companies, and they're interested in a certain one. They'll ask us, hey, can I present that class? And then we would then get in touch with the person who authored that class and ask them what they'd like us to do. Do you want to allow this other company to present your class, or do you want to present it for them? It depends on your wishes. But if you're going to the work to develop the class, it is your presentation to use and determine who else can use it. Okay, so if there's no final questions, that's all we have for today. Look at the next steps if you are listening to the webinar online so that you can see how to proceed with customizing or developing a new presentation. There will be more resources below. If you're listening live today, I will email you these resources just in a few minutes. But if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. Sarah Gregg, you can reach me at sarah@naturalstoneinstitute.org or by the phone number on our website.